Today, the president said repeatedly, quote, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem." Donald Trump said that on Twitter. We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem. He then said it repeatedly in his White House coronavirus briefing that substitutes as his new version of a campaign rally. Dr. Anthony Fauci had no comment about what the president said at that briefing today because Dr. Fauci was not present at today's briefing. Donald Trump droned on repetitively and meaninglessly at the White House briefing today, to the point that live coverage of the briefing was actually abandoned by this network and other cable news networks and all of the big broadcast networks, NBC, ABC, CBS. They all abandoned live coverage of the president's briefing today. And so not as many people as the president had hoped got to hear him say, "We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem." The problem with coronavirus is death. That's the problem. There is no cure that is worse than death, except, apparently, in the imagination of Donald Trump. The White House press corps today chased the idea with the president that he was giving the very clear implication that maybe a week from now, the president will declare America all ready to go back to work.
America will again and soon be open for business, very soon, a lot sooner than 3 or 4 months that somebody was suggesting, a lot sooner. We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem.
The problem for Donald Trump is that he's not in charge of this one. Donald Trump has not closed down anything inside the United States. Donald Trump has not closed a single business in this country, not a single school. He hasn't closed anything. It's America's mayors and county officials and governors who have done that. Mostly the governors of New York and California have both closed down their states, and there is nothing Donald Trump can do about that. The governors of New York and California control more economic activity combined than most of the rest of the United States of America put together. And they are not going to reopen their states because of anything that Donald Trump says. Donald Trump didn't shut down anything, and so Donald Trump cannot reopen anything. Donald Trump is not in charge here. The governors are in charge. And that is good news. And that includes Republican governors who have shut down their states. Governor Gavin Newsom, whose state controls more economic activity than any other state and has more people than any other state. Governor of California will not be listening to anything Donald Trump says about when Gavin Newsom should begin returning California to normal. Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York has more coronavirus cases in his state than any other state. And in the biggest city in his state, Governor Cuomo has a street named Wall Street. And it will be Andrew Cuomo and not Donald Trump who decides when New York State and New York City and Wall Street get back to normal. And luckily for New York, Andrew Cuomo is smart enough to not listen to a word Donald Trump says about that. But Andrew Cuomo has said publicly many times that he is guided by the medical professionals, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, who was not present at today's White House briefing and rally for some reason. The Washington Post reported today that Dr. Fauci is telling Donald Trump that it is too soon to think about sending people back to work. Quote, Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and a member of the president's coronavirus task force, and other leading public health experts have told administration officials and Republican lawmakers that prematurely scaling back social distancing measures would hamper efforts to mitigate the virus and would devastate hospitals, according to the people with knowledge of the conversations. In an interview with Science magazine, published this weekend, Dr. Fauci was asked what it's like to be standing there in the White House briefing room when Donald Trump says something that is not true. Dr. Fauci said, I can't jump in front of the microphone and push him down. Okay, he said it. Let's try to get it corrected for the next time. In that same interview, Dr. Fauci said he will never refer to the coronavirus as the China virus, which is Donald Trump's preferred term. And in that same interview, Dr. Fauci was asked if he has been criticized within the Trump administration for a moment at last Friday's press conference when he put his hands over his face when Donald Trump referred to the deep State Department. When asked in the interview if he was criticized within the administration for that moment that went viral, Dr. Fauci's answer to that was, quote, no comment. Also in that Science Magazine interview, Dr. Fauci was asked what happened, what happens before each of those Trump press conferences in the briefing room, and Dr. Fauci said, we're in the task force. We sit down for an hour and a half, go over all the issues on the agenda, and then we proceed from there to an anteroom right in front of the Oval Office to talk about what are going to be the messages, what are the kinds of things we're going to want to emphasize. Then we go in to see the president. We present our consensus to him, and somebody writes a speech, and then he gets up and ad-libs on his speech, and then we're up there to try to answer questions. Today, the medical professional on the stage with the president was asked if they would be recommending that people be encouraged to go back to their jobs just a week from today, which would be the end of the Trump administration's announced, quote, 15 days to end the spread, which is really just a public relations campaign. It had absolutely no laws or rules or regulations in it. Dr. Deborah Birx said that they will still be collecting data for the next several days, and she couldn't say what recommendation she would give a week from now. She would never do that, she said. Donald Trump was asked repeatedly if he would follow the advice of Dr. Anthony Fauci at the end of that 15-day period, which will be next Monday, and Donald Trump repeatedly refused to answer that question. Leading off our discussion tonight are Dr. Ashish